there is so much overlap between death and exile in the Hebrew Bible, particularly. For one, in Leviticus, one of the things you'll see that you'll see described there very often is something that we might call like the death penalty for breaking various commandments. And the Hebrew word there is kata. And so what that means is like to be cut off. And when you trace the application and the usage of that word, it equally gets used for people being sent away from the community, being cut off from the community, being sent out into the wilderness, being sent off into the surrounding cities ruled by the gods of the nations, all those kind of things, and also the actual biological death penalty. So it's like a relational death or a biological death. There's a lot of conflation and overlap between those in the context of exile and being cut off. I really think it's important to look at that moment in the garden as being a time where Adam and Eve were cut off from that tree of life, from that access to the source of life, and not to see that as like a punishment of, okay, you broke a commandment, you now must die, but actually as a mercy. And that's something that and here I'll throw a bone to Amber. That's something that Amber brought up in the chat, and that I'm really glad she mentioned as well, in that many of the church fathers read those passages at the end of Genesis 3 and said that God gave them death as a way to keep them from getting worse, from being crystallized in their sin. So that exile, that death, was a way for them to not be stuck where they are. It was a way to like limit the sin just by having a sheer, finite amount of days. It was a way to unmake the composite creature that is body and spirit by separating them, and hopefully by doing that, perhaps to the destruction of the flesh for the salvation of the soul, perhaps. And it was also a mercy because it was a way to almost like remind the human that he wasn't God, because that certainly was what he thought he was trying to do in the garden. So
reminder that we are the emissary and not the master.